questions.
Thank you very much. Christian, please.
Oui, bonjour, Madame Metsola.
Good afternoon, Madame Metsola. You've focused on the need to respond urgently to Ukraine. A few months ago, the European Parliament blocked an instrument that would have allowed ammunition to be stored. We see that some of the funding for Ukraine is coming from unusual sources. Are we really meeting the needs of Ukraine? I have the impression that the European Parliament is using a number of different instruments, that the member states are allowing some unusual things to happen, perhaps inappropriate things.
Okay, merci pour.
Thank you for that question. The European Parliament has been clear since the very first day of the war. We stand with Ukraine in the face of this illegal invasion. I'm starting with that because that's really important. That's the basis on which we have taken all of our decisions. Now, on microfinancing, the European Parliament took the decision right away to assist Ukraine and Moldova. We used the emergency procedure for that, but we also took decisions outside of that emergency procedure. We used the procedures as best we could in the most efficient way possible to get things done. It was important for us, for me indeed, to have the Parliament be in a situation where they could respond to the demands of citizens, but also to the demands of countries who need us. And that's via all the means available to us. We perhaps saw that Article 122 was overused, but we're trying to use that article in as efficient a way as possible. We hope that over the course of the next year, we will be able to act as co-legislators using all of the competences that the Parliament has, and also ensuring that citizens are involved in these decisions that have an impact on them, and especially decisions made in relation to Ukraine.
The next question, please. Yes.
Caroline Born, Deutschlandradio. President, you wrote a letter to the Swedish presidency about CO2 emission standards. Could you elaborate a bit why you wrote that letter, and would you maybe address some countries specifically with that letter?
Thank you very much. Yes, I was mandated after a very open discussion last week in Strasbourg among the Conference of Presidents, which is the group leaders, to write a letter to the presidency in office, and therefore Prime Minister Kristersson, on the need for legislative predictability. Why do we mention the word legislative predictability? In response to your question, this is not specifically directed at one country or another, or one legislative file or another. It is about the last year of this already very difficult legislative mandate, where we have laws that have been negotiated between two co-legislators, legislation sometimes that has been on the table for almost 2 years and subsequently approved with significant majorities in the hemicycle in this particular case that I wrote in February. So our point as a Parliament is primarily institutional and procedural, that we cannot go back on deals, because this is ultimately about trust between co-legislators and the credibility of the legislative process, which, if you link to the answer I gave to the previous question, is specifically also about this. If we are asked or tasked by our citizens to legislate in a specific area, to take decisions in a specific area, we need to be prepared to do that. And once we do that, then we need to deliver.
Barzan, please.
Thank you so much. Barzan Hassan, reporter from Kurdistan 24. Before your European election 2024, do you think a possible agreement on immigration package? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, next week we will vote on the asylum and migration regulation file, the qualifications file and screening. If you think about the package, there are many different individual legislative proposals, some which are in the security part of the pact and some which are in the asylum part of the pact. What we wanted, and this is a consistent position of the Parliament, is that when we are going to deliver on a legislative package on migration, then it is one that has to be fair with who asks for protection, which is firm with those who are not eligible, and which is strong with traffickers and violators of human rights who prey on the most vulnerable people on our planet. We came into this legislature with that demand from our citizens. Last legislature was disappointing. We had arrived to this point. We voted in the plenary, very difficult files on solidarity, on security, but it took us years, and some are still waiting for a decision. What has our position been as well? This is an area where majority voting takes place in the Council. It is not an area with unanimity, and therefore, if we can find majorities, we need the courage to have the general approach, again another technical term that is used in this Council during this presidency, in order for us to be ready by 2024 with legislation. Will this address all the challenges? I would never say that, but what I do not want is the automatic return of every government to a national position that is completely different from the neighbouring position. The European Union has shown throughout this mandate that it can act in unison, it can act when united, as it did on the pandemic, as we have been doing during the war. On migration, this is one of the areas where the citizens have been asking us, pleading with us for years to do that, and I think it's about time that we did it.
Yes, please.
Sándor from Euronews. It's not related to the summit, but we understand that the European Parliament is preparing to join the court case in Luxembourg against Hungary's child protection law. Can you tell us why is it important for the European Parliament? What do you expect, and what's your personal position on this? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, there was a decision taken in the Legal Affairs Committee, which is the process that we have, when the European Parliament takes a decision as to whether it will intervene before the Court of Justice in defence of an EU regulation or directive, basically a legislative act. In this case, the vote took place, and therefore I was asked to task the legal service to prepare such intervention, and I have done that.
Yes, please.
Hatem Sakari from Al Ain News Agency. My question is in French, if it doesn't mind. Quand on évoque la situation...
Looking at the economic and social and political situation in Tunisia, obviously migration is part of that. Your dear neighbour, Tunisia, needs economic and social aid to avoid the migration situation escalating and becoming more and more difficult there. Do you have programmes in place for this country that really needs help from its European neighbours to be able to cope better with migration flows? Thank you.
For this question. First of all, preserving representative institutions is fundamental to Tunisia's development. We are deeply concerned about the authoritarian drift in that country and the instrumentalization of Tunisia's dire socio-economic situation to reverse the country's historical democratic transition. The Parliament has long called for an end to the ongoing crackdown on civil society, and we also urge the Vice President of the Commission, the High Representative, and the Member States to publicly denounce the deterioration of the human rights situation. With regards to the partnership, as you are right, this is a neighbouring country, a very important country for the European Union. We need to look at how helpful specific EU support programmes have been, and they have been. I have witnessed them myself as a member of the European Parliament on missions to that country, and also with an understanding that there has to be the fullest of respect of human rights, and any discourse with regards, for example, to sub-Saharan migrants and subsequent attacks are in full breach of international and national laws, actually notably Law 50/2018 against racial discrimination. So it is a difficult situation. The Parliament has been quite vocal on this, and it is with our interest in order to preserve democracy around the Mediterranean and have a constant discourse with our interlocutors also on the southern part of the Mediterranean. This has been something that is also close to my heart, and it is something that I think we need to work on much more in the future.
And the last question, I'm sorry, please.
Hello, President Metsola, Jorge Liboreiro, Euronews. I would like to go back to the issue of the combustion engine and ask you clearly about Germany's attitude, because many people in this city have been taken by surprise by this last-minute opposition to the law. Do you think Germany's attitude is setting a very dangerous precedent when it comes to interinstitutional negotiations? Do you think the spirit of the trilogues is being diminished by this last-minute opposition? Can we still trust the results of trilogues from now on, especially when it comes to the Green Deal? Thank you.
As a lawyer, I will say I will always trust in trilogues. And I say that because when you arrive at a trilogue, it would be the result or the culmination of years of negotiation from the very moment that a Commission proposal starts to be even thought of to when it arrives to the co-legislator's desk, after loads of negotiations coming together to find a solution. Look, the Green Deal is, let's say, a fundamental pillar of our mandate. And what I would say, and I will repeat in part what I answered earlier, is that anything that will seek to diminish or deter from the legislative predictability that we need, not only as a Parliament, but as a European Union and as a co-legislator, is something we will always caution against. This is why the letter was sent, and I can tell you that if this had to happen again, this letter will be sent again, but I would hope that it doesn't need to come to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.